Herb. Herb is a plant. I mean, herbs are good for everything. Herb.
Welcome to Eugene Cannabis TV. You made it to episode 753. You got your host, DanK. I'm here by my lonesome tonight and got some stories of things of interest that I picked up and want to talk about and get the word out on. And there's some events coming up. I'll have more details on our next broadcast, but there's some events that are starting to open up that you need to hear about. The biggest one, the most exciting, is going to be at Jasper Grange. And anyway, we'll get more on that later, but it's just out of town, and we have the venue, and we're ready to go on that one. So anyway, I wanted to talk about the the first story here is from the Mexico News Daily, titled "Marijuana Growers Worry About Their Future Under Legalization. Sales Down for Growers as Steps to Legalize Shake Up the Market." This is dated April 16th this year. As Mexico nears full legalization of marijuana, some illegal growers are worried about what will happen to their livelihoods. With legalization awaiting final Senate approval for recreational use and sale, home growers have already seen their sales shrink, according to a report by the Associated Press. For Maria, a marijuana grower near Badriago, Sinaloa, that means half her crop is sitting in storage when it should have already been sold. She attributes the change to the pending legalization, which was shaking up the illegal market. Demand had already been falling as many U.S. states legalized marijuana, and drug cartels added fentanyl and other more profitable synthetic drugs to their portfolios. For Maria and her family, marijuana pays for everything except the food they grow for themselves. Clothing and her children's education have all been financed by the crop. But the years of plenty are accompanied by periods of violence when rival groups sought to control the area. Some growers are diversifying into opium poppies to balance the risk that their marijuana crop will not sell in the new business ecosystem created by legalization. That is the strategy. That's the strategy that Maria and her family took. Since we heard they were going to legalize marijuana, we began to make the poppy plots larger. But their efforts to grow opium were stymied by a government operation that sprayed herbicides over her fields. The next strategy was to grow a high-quality strain. The family hopes it will be easier to sell. The marijuana they sold from the previous harvest yielded U.S. $500, or about $25 per kilogram. The destroyed poppies would have netted the family about $5,000. Another man in the area who requested anonymity to speak freely said he also grows a certain strain with higher psychoactive content that normally sells at 10 times the price of standard Mexican marijuana. 2 harvests normally yield $15,000, he said, but it is not easy money. He has to fight for water and pay a fee to dealers in order to sell in their current territory in Culiacan, the capital of Sinaloa. Both he and Maria were less concerned about legalization than sales. If they pay me the same, or almost, being legal, well, great. We'll work more at ease. Mexican politicians commonly cite reduced violence as a motivation for legalization. Zara Snap is an international drug policy consultant and co-founder of Institute RIA, a public policy think tank in Mexico. She said that violence will not be reduced overnight, and the legislation needs a strong social justice component. The objective is not to end the illegal market, because that's not going to happen in the first years, but rather reduce it as much as possible, said Snap. In the communities, if the communities decide not to move to the illegal market, it is because they aren't sufficient economic reasons. So anyway, it's interesting that Mexico is struggling with a lot of the same problems we had when we were transitioning to legalized, or at least decriminalized. I like to say it's not criminalized, it's not legalized, it's decriminalized. But anyway, it's an interesting story from Mexico to see how that's going down there. And the legalization is definitely advancing forward. So we're all glad to hear that, or most of us anyway. Now this is an exciting article. This is from National Normal, dated April 8th this year. It's talking about the state of Virginia. The headline is expedited legalization measures to take effect July 1st, 2021. Richmond, Virginia. A majority of the Virginia Legislature voted on Wednesday to approve amendments to Senate Bill 1406, House Bill 2312, which legalizes the personal use, possession, and cultivation of marijuana later this year. Because lawmakers concurred with amendments recommended by the governor, no further procedural action is required in order for the new laws to take effect July 1st, 2021. When it's enacted, the new law will permit adults to possess up to 1 ounce of marijuana and cultivate up to 4 cannabis plants per household without penalty. Other provisions in the law, which seek to license the commercial production and retail sale of cannabis, do not take effect until January 1st, 2024. Commenting on the final passage, Normal Development Director Jen Michelle Pedini, who also serves as the Executive Director of Virginia Normal, said, "This is an incredible victory for Virginia. Legalization will bring an end to the thousands of low-level marijuana infractions occurring annually in the Commonwealth, ending a discriminatory practice that far too often targets Virginians who are young, poor, and people of color." Majority Leader Chanel Herring added, "It is a large day. It is a huge day for equality in the Commonwealth. Virginia is now the first state in the South to legalize recreational marijuana use, and I'm so proud to have been able to carry this monumental legislation. I am ever grateful to the commitment and advocacy from Normal on this topic. Getting Virginia to this day would not have been possible without their hard work and dedication for the cause." So that is exciting, and like I said, it's sanity continues to grow. At least that's what we like to call it. And then in Connecticut, this is from MarijuanaMoment.net, and by the way, MarijuanaMoment.net is a great source of marijuana news stories. I recommend it highly. This is written by Kyle Jagger, dated April 8th, 2021. Connecticut governor says marijuana legalization will be decided by voters if lawmakers fail to enact reform. The governor of Connecticut said on Wednesday that if lawmakers fail to pass a marijuana legalization bill, he expects voters to decide on the issue via a referendum. Now, I want to jump in right there and mention that we've been there. That's what legislatures do. Sometimes it looks like something might pass, but they don't want to step up to the plate. So then the citizens have to do an initiative, which they get on the ballot. That's what happened in Oregon. We finally got an initiative on the ballot and won quite handily, actually. And then, of course, the legislature sabotaged it from then on, but that's another story. But anyway, so apparently Connecticut's going the same way, typical politics. However, we do have a good guy as a governor. Governor Ned Lamont, who's a Democrat, was asked about the status of cannabis reform in Connecticut at a press conference, and he noted that a bill to legalize marijuana for adult use that he's backing cleared the Judiciary Committee on Thursday after being amended by the panel. That said, as was made clear by lawmakers at that hearing, the governor said the legislation is, as it currently stands, is not the final product. I think there's going to be a couple more iterations on this, Lamont said. Considering that cannabis is legal in Massachusetts and was recently legalized in New York, Lamont said, it's time for Connecticut to do this on a very regulated basis. Otherwise, I don't want to also surrender it to the underground market, which is really dangerous. Legislators have now have their fingerprints on the reform proposal and still need to reach an agreement on provisions such as how to allocate tax revenue in an adequate way. So it's going to take a couple more loops, but I think we'll get it done. If lawmakers don't in fact get it done, the governor said he anticipated that the question of legalization will go to voters. Marijuana is sort of interesting to me when it comes to the vote of the people. Through some sort of referendum, it passes overwhelmingly. When it goes through the legislature and a lot of telephone calls are made, it's slim or doesn't pass, Lamont said. We're trying to do it through the legislature. Folks are elected to make a decision, and we'll see where it goes. If it doesn't, we'll probably end up with a referendum. The legislature has considered legalization proposals on several occasions in recent years, including the bill that Democrats introduced last year on the governor's behalf. These bills stalled, however. Lamont reiterated that his support for legalizing marijuana during his annual State of the State address in January, stating that he would be working with the legislature to advance the reform of his session. Ritter said in November that legalization in the state is inevitable. He added later that month that I think it's going to be a 50-50 chance of passing in 2021, and I think you should have a good vote regardless, our governor said in an interview earlier this year, and he puts the odds of legislation passing at 60 to 40% chance. The governor has compared the need for regional coordination on marijuana policy to the coronavirus response, stating that officials have got to think regionally when it comes to how we deal with the pandemic. And I think we have to think regionally when it comes to marijuana as well. He also said that legalization in Connecticut could potentially reduce the spread of COVID-19 by limiting out-of-state trips to purchase legal cannabis in neighboring states such as Massachusetts and New York. So that's some more good news, and it just keeps happening across the United States. I can't remember the statistics now, but there's only something like, I think, 6 states that will have some kind of decriminalization or legalization or medical, and so it's going, it's continued to grow. It's always good for our good to see anyway. At least old iron activists like myself. I remember fighting an up-road battle and fighting every inch of ground we could get, and fighting off law enforcement along the way. And it's been quite a battle, and things are sure a lot better than they were. I have to admit that. Even though I complain a lot, it's a lot better. So anyway, we've got the excuse me a minute. Oh yeah, this one here's another one from Marijuana Moment, and this was really interesting regarding hemp. The EPA awards a $100,000 grant to support production. Welcome back to Eugene Cannabis TV, the second half of episode 753. And I would start into a story a little premature there, but we'll start over again here. And we're talking about the hemp-based bricks. This is really exciting. Our friend Kathy gives us a lot of information on that, and there's this exciting way to build sustainably is the word I'm trying to think of anyway. But so the EPA awards a $100,000 grant to support production of hemp-based bricks for sustainable construction. This is dated April 9th, 2021 from marijuanamoment.net. It went, again, a great source. The Environmental Protection Agency announced this week that they were, yes, 100,000, whatever that was in the headline. Earth Earth Merchant was one of the 24 grant recipients under EPA's Small Business Innovation Research Program. The company's hemp-based Ogali bricks were seen as durable, lightweight, carbon-negative alternative to traditional construction bricks made of concrete or other materials. EPA said in a notice that the hempcrete product will improve energy efficiency and indoor air quality in single-family homes and other architectural applications. Industrial hemp can be grown without pesticides or chemical fertilizers, requires less water than crops like cotton or corn, and reaches maturity 100 days from planting. The federal agency said hemp photosynthesizes carbon dioxide with greater efficiency than trees and can be harvested twice a year, doubling the rate of carbon sequestration. Further, the hemp bricks can improve health outcomes for residents because they contain components that are antifungal and antimicrobial, reducing the risks of airborne bacteria while also being vapor permeable. Ogali bricks also fully produced in the United States, where the industrial hemp supply has blossomed following passage of the 2018 Farm Bill legalizing the crop. So that's really exciting, and we expect to say that Washington are actually working on that. There's a group up there that are doing actually hemp construction and having classes and showing people how to do it. So it's really exciting. And then we have I found this on the ScienceAlert.com website, written by Mac McCrae, dated the 16th of April this year, titled "Cannabis and Psychosis are linked, and we're a step closer to understanding how." It's hard to argue with the science. Decades of research has made it all but incontrovertible that most of cannabis and the emergence of schizophrenia and psychosis in some people are linked on some level. What that level is and how that relationship functions isn't so easy to unravel, with mental health and drug use community locked in a tug-of-war that makes cause and side effect hard to tease apart. According to a new study conducted by a team of researchers from the Center for Addiction and Mental Health and King's College London in the UK, the genes for schizophrenia, which proved to be the one key to explaining why some cannabis users develop psychosis while others don't. These results are significant because they're the first evidence that we've seen that people genetically prone to psychosis might be disproportionately affected by cannabis, said CAMH psychiatrist William Weinberg. Psychosis is a serious mental health condition affecting how the brain builds a perception of the world around it. The consequences can range from the merely confusing to the downright distressing, interpreting or correlating sights and sounds in ways that make it hard to tell what's real and what isn't. Psychotic episodes, a key symptom of severe depression, bipolar disorder, and schizophrenia, can also be induced by various psychoactive substances, including the active compound in cannabis, delta-9 tetrachlorobinol, delta-9-THC, more commonly called. In fact, research suggests those who use cannabis are nearly 4 times as likely to experience some sort of psychosis compared to people who have abstained. Keeping an open mind, these same numbers would emerge in populations where people with mental health conditions disappropriately use cannabis to treat psychotic episodes. However, further research suggests self-medication is unlikely to play a significant role in this relationship, with studies consistently finding most people start to use cannabis not to treat the symptoms of psychosis, but simply to get high. Even when controlling for personality disorders and use of the psychotics, the risk remains, making it harder to refute the fact cannabis appears to be the trigger for experiences of psychosis. Still, taken from a different perspective, those people who use cannabis never come close to experiencing a psychotic episode, making it important to work out exactly where the differences lie. Using 100,000 participant records from the UK Biobank, the scientists behind this latest study analyzed the relationship between genetics, cannabis use, and psychotic experiences. Records contained details on frequency of past cannabis use and experiences of the auditory or visual hallucinations, delusions of persecution, or delusions of reference. Crucially, the biobank also provided evidence of key mutations on genes associated with schizophrenia, giving the team a score indicating the likelihood of developing schizophrenia. In total, just over 4% of records with no report of cannabis use presented some sort of delusionary or hallucinatory experience. This figure jumped to 7% for those who had used cannabis in their past, a result that comes as no real surprise. On digging deeper, the increase was most pronounced for those with a high genetic score for schizophrenia. Among records with the fifth highest scores, the interest was around 60%. The increase was around 60%. Among those with the fifth lowest, it was around 40%. And because genetic risk scoring is still in its early days, the true influence of genetics on the cannabis psychosis relationships may be even greater than what we found here, said Weinberg. Studies on schizophrenia have progressed in leaps and bounds in recent years, while evidence revealing a genetic condition that puts neurological development at risk of subtle disturbances in the environment, especially while in the womb. Given most of what we know of the condition is biased by a focus on westernized, largely white populations, we have a long way to go before we can make generalized claims. But with the legalization of cannabis, putting the drug on par with alcohol and tobacco in an even greater number of jurisdictions, it's become increasingly important to learn as much about the potential risks as possible. So I'm sure that could be quite controversial, especially among people that have many years of using it and experiences of it. So anyway, that was interesting to check into that. I personally, in my experience of being around medical marijuana patients, I found that one of the problems with people that were taking cannabis is that they felt so much better that they wanted to get off of their other prescriptions, and some of them were some pretty high-powered stuff that you can't just quit, and so they would just quit and then didn't have problems, and so it all has to be done under doctor's orders so you don't get yourself in trouble, because some of the stuff is really pretty bad. And so the last story is get ready for federal marijuana legalization with GMP certification. This was at the marijuanabizdaily.com website, written by Kristen Nichols, April 15th, 2021. Legalization is coming. Time to airlock the doors. Marijuana and hemp cultivators and manufacturers are preparing to compete when legal changes clear the way for national and global THC and CBD sales by making big investments in technologies such as microbial monitoring and airflow analysis and airlocking doors. The pricey prep work mirrors the kinds of safety protocols required by anyone making products consumed by the public. In order for this industry to mature, it's imperative that facilities adhere to what is coming, said A.C. Braddock, CEO of Eden Labs, an extraction firm in Seattle. And what's coming is called GMP. It's short for Good Manufacturing Practice. A lengthy set of cleanliness and safety protocols required of all kinds of manufacturers making consumer packaged goods, from commercial bread factories to pharmaceutical farms making high-tech medical treatments and devices. The rules, often called CGMP, with the C meaning current, because the regulations change over time, aren't cheap or simple. Companies can expect to spend six figures making their facility GMP compliant and more to get a credible certifying company to verify GMP is followed. But the certification expense is an absolute necessity for any cannabis producer looking to make products in an eventual large-scale cannabis marketplace. If you have any chance at a mainstream market, you have to have it, said Summer LaForce, director of FS Oil, a hemp extraction company in Woodburn, Oregon. Acquiring GMP certification starts at the end. That's because U.S. and international authorities maintain different sets of GMP depending on the product. Start by determining if you make food, dietary supplements, cosmetics, or pharmaceuticals. Each category has a set of GMP guidelines determined by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, the European, who maintain their own sets of GMP standards, although they are largely similar. So, anyway, GMP, that's something to check out. Do a search on that, and that's what's coming up. We're getting into the show. Real quick announcement. I've always used some guests. I'd love to have come and tell your cannabis story. Get a hold of us. We're here on Monday nights, and we'd love to have some company and again talk about your cannabis experience. And anyway, you got your host DanK, and it's been a pleasure. We'll be here next week. We'll see you then.